Here's the thing that I learned about technology is the first couple of years, there is a substantial deviation between those that know and those that don't. And that arbitrage is a significant opportunity to capture market share and make a crap ton of money. And that's the thing that I saw with the AI.
Meet Eric Whitmoyer, CEO of My Biz Coaches, business strategist, and host of the Biz Coach Show. With over 25 years of experience, he's helping 1,000 businesses scale to multi-million-dollar success through proven systems and powerful mentorship.
Some people ask me, aren't you afraid it's going to take away your job? Like, no, you'll still need people with wisdom. Information is one thing, wisdom is something else.
You in the world of AI today, where are you in the spectrum of your AI journey?
A lot of the things that we aren't inherently good at, that are the back end of the business, are often things that can be automated and leveraged even more so now with AI.
Let's talk about some of the easy wins from an automation perspective. You talked about doing outreach or business development or funneling. That can be automated. The very simplistic way is... Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the AI for Business Owners podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Torello, and with me this week is Eric Whitmoyer. Eric, tell the audience who you are and give them a little background.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. So, Eric Whitmoyer from My Biz Coaches. And what we do is we are a collection of professionals who serve business owners, a series of coaches, consultants, and fractional executives who work with business owners to help them grow and scale their companies and determine where they want to go and where they want to get to. And our catchphrase is from startup to exit. We're there for you when you need us.
Like that one. That's cool.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. How'd you get into that role? What's your sort of your background? Did you stumble on that? Did you mean to get there? What happened?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I spent 24 years in the wireless industry, and I watched that industry go from, I say wireless, it was paging when I started, and it grew through the analog days into the digital days and to what we have today. But for the 24 years that I was in that space, it was wireless retail, and we were dealers for the carriers. And I spent my entire career on what we call the indirect channel or the dealer channel, which is basically in layman's terms like a franchise for the dealer. So what's important about that is two of the companies that I worked with, we grew to well over $100 million. I was an executive with both those companies, played a very integral role in helping open over 150 locations personally throughout those years. And what I learned in that space doing what we did for as long as we did it, literally startup to exit. It's like,
right, exactly.
Yeah, opening a store from scratch, building it, growing a region, growing an entire state from scratch, buying and selling businesses, everything that went along with that. And so when you grow a company from, the last company I was with, when I came on board, our first year, we did $1 million in revenue. By the time we sold the company, what our total revenue would have been is about $190 million in top line revenue. So we sold in 2017, and I got what they call an exit bonus. And I tell people just enough money to pay everything off, not enough to retire. So what happened was I saw the writing on the wall. I saw how much, again, it's retail. So I saw how much in the everything on sales was going online. And so I started paying attention. I'm like, man, this is going to change the way retail is done. More and more people are buying cell phones online. This business isn't going to last much longer. So I started looking at coaching as my career transition in my mid 40s. And so I got a certification to be a life coach. And so I started doing that, and I was working through that. And in the process of kind of building my brand, I wrote a book, and all this while I'm still employed in that industry, working with a lady to work on my branding to build my business out. And she says, she stops me in the middle of our conversation. She says, Eric, why do you want to be a life coach? And I'm like, well, I love working with these younger kids and helping them grow and develop and everything like that. And she's like, I hear you. She goes, but everything you do, everything you say, everything is just very business oriented. She goes, I would see you more as a business coach. So it took me 4 years to hear that. But 4 years later, after we sold the business, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. That's when it hit me. I'm like, maybe I should become a business coach.
Well, that was a fortuitous conversation, though.
It was. And I reflect on it today, and I'm like, it was probably one of the best $1,000 investments I ever made.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But so I got into business coaching and started initially just being a sales consultant, and it evolved. It was 5 months into my first contract, COVID hit, and so I had to pivot. Then everybody started doing everything on Zoom, and coaching became vogue. And all of a
Uh-huh.
sudden it was in vogue, and I'm like, okay, well, I made another pivot, and that's when I come up with the brand My Biz Coaches. And we really focus on helping business owners kind of identify where their opportunities were in their business. And then as it evolved, initially I only worked with established businesses. Now we work with startups. And we also, because of what we call the silver tsunami, people are reaching retirement age and want to sell their businesses, aren't necessarily
Yeah.
prepared. We help them prepare to exit. So that's kind of how it evolved.
Just to scroll back to the beginning of that for one quick anecdote. You mentioned pagers and cellular. 1989, I was 20 years old, and I got an opportunity through Cellular One, really old name for you. I'm sure it makes sense. Uh, to purchase a cell tower
Oh,
in
no
in
way.
in South Florida
Interesting.
in '89. So as the build out was happening, and the way this is were strange, I was working at Radio Shack and I was selling, transportable and
Yeah.
other, in car phones. The
Yep. Yep. Yep.
handheld hadn't actually hit at the time.
Right.
And so just through industry contacts there, but I was 19. I didn't have $30,000. I probably would have made a lot of value out of that had I been able to to transact it, but I just couldn't do it. And I've looked back and kicked myself going, oh,
I
you
was
should
just
have,
going to say, I would be
but
kicking
how
you
would
for
you,
you.
I didn't have any resources. There was nothing I could do. I didn't have anything I could sell. I didn't know anybody with pockets. But it's hilarious when I think about it. Like, I could have bought a cell tower. Like, it makes no sense. But, it would have just been bundled into another big sale, and it would have been whatever the profit was. Sure. But, who knows? At 20, you could have parlayed it into all kinds of stuff. But you had to have the 30, and yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not remotely relevant to anything. I just thought it would be a cool anecdote because it's in the space, and I'm like, oh, he'll know what Cellular One is.
Yeah, that's actually what's interesting about that is there's a guy who had a single cell tower that is strategically placed between, it's in the outskirts of Vegas. It's between Vegas and what we call no man's land. And it's right at the top of a mountain, right above, and I can't remember the name of the city now, but point is that there's no coverage there except for this one tower. And all the carriers are co-locating off this one tower, and this guy
Right.
has owned it for like 25 years or something ridiculous. And I don't even know, that was back then. I have no idea if he still owns it or not, but I know he made a crap ton of money on that one tower. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, because the tower owner gets to charge rates monthly for you to put
That's
whatever your
right.
antennas, your
Yep.
repeaters, all that stuff on it, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And the some of them in the early days negotiated royalties with the carriers, so they were getting monthly recurring royalties for every ping on the tower.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, if only. Talk about
Right.
the Back to the Future moment. What would you do? I'd go buy that dang cell tower in
That's
1989. That's
exactly.
what I'd do. Okay. All right. So tell me a little bit about you in the world of AI today. So like where are you in the spectrum of your AI journey, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I would say relatively deep, uh, past the knees, probably up to the thighs, maybe right up to my waist. I'm pretty deep into it, mostly because, like my experience in the wireless industry, when it was paging and then analog and then got into the digital cellular, when it was 2005, they had acknowledged that the Nokia phone that we were promoting at that time, that it had exceeded the computing power of the space shuttle that we sent to the moon. And that's to your point, it's a handheld unit, right? So it's like, wow, that's pretty amazing. That was 2005. That was 20 years ago. So, and it was only having watched what I watched in that industry, I'm like, doesn't, I mean, if you paid attention to the technology at all, and I'd sold electronics over the years, including before I got into wireless even, you watched the DVD evolution and dissolution. And you watched, right, all these technologies evolve during our time frame, right? If you're Gen X, you watched all these technologies that we joked about it literally right before the call, and the fact that we're using video conferencing right now, right? But if you look at that, I was like, man, there's a play here. And here's the thing that I learned about technology is the first couple of years, let's say the first 3 to 5 years, there is a substantial deviation between those that know and those that don't. And that arbitrage is a significant opportunity to capture market share and make a crap ton of money. And that's the thing that I saw with the AI. So, as it relates to coaching, some people ask me, aren't you afraid it's going to take away your job? And I'm like, no, you'll still need people with wisdom Information is one thing, wisdom is something else. Now, that may happen. I don't know if it's going to happen in the next 15 years, but by then I hope to be, I'll be on retirement on the beach somewhere by then. So
Sure.
that's
No,
my
no.
hope. Anyway.
Actually, this is a topic in a lot of spaces. This isn't just, about coaching, right?
No, absolutely.
And I think we're still one part of the AI game. We're still nascent. We're still just kind of scratching the surface. I think what's happened is the innovation is the large language model and the capability that you get from the ability to interact at a language level. And there's an underlying current that I think some people miss. I'll try to give you an analogy, right? If you're the right age, the phrase reading is fundamental means something to you because it used to be a big theme on the television, depending on how old you are.
Right.
But what that was actually trying to say is if you learn reading, you can then learn everything because if you want to be a history major, you got to read history. So reading is fundamental to everything, okay? What I want to say is language is fundamental because if the system can understand language, you can give it instructions, but it can read instructions. And so what I'm getting to, and the reason I'm bringing this, it's a little bit full circle, but the large language model is the base technology that's the innovation. But in every technology adoption curve that you've seen for 25 years or whatever, there's this big spike and then this big dip. And that dip is usually labeled the trough of disillusionment. But after that, there's a steady climb up and out, and what we refer to as just mature adoption. The reason for that is it's not generally the innovation itself that is the whole trigger. It's the base. So think of it this way. Wireless phone capability, definitely the innovation. But iPhone App Store is the thing that made it ubiquitous and critical to have in all times in your hand. But it's based on the underlying innovation, which is wireless, cellular. Okay, fine. So what I'm getting to is I think the large language model is the innovation. It's the apps that stack on top that are going to really be the thing that takes off. And we're really not there yet. Where we are, where you and I are talking right now,
Yep.
There's some cool things happening. There's some cool stuff being stacked on top of LLMs. People are making interesting apps, but we're pre-App Store still in my world, right? It's 2005 cell phone. Everybody's still T9 texting. I know I'm making jokes for you, but some of the audience is going to be like, I don't know what they just said. They're just cackling, but it's fine. But the App Store explosion in this context hasn't happened yet. I think everybody and their brother is trying to write an AI app or an AI business, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there'll be a gold rush.
Those who know are trying to do it.
Those who know, and there's a whole bunch who are just faking it, getting funding,
that too.
.com boomy kind of, okay, fine. But what I'm excited about is okay, let's get past it. Let's get the innovation to not be so innovative. And I think that's what might happen faster, right? So the idea that ChatGPT is the fastest growing application from a user-based perspective, 300 million users in a record time, cool. I think I'd like to go back and have somebody tell me how many of those users are still using it, but that's another conversation. But you look at, there were plenty of people using cell phones, but boy, oh boy, once that iPhone App Store showed up, almost everybody needed a phone. And then Android had to jump on and have their own, and then we got competition. Okay, great. It took a while. I think AI will take less while.
Well, it's the enhancement of technology as it compounds on itself. Right. Yeah.
The pace of the rate of change increases as we continue to get more technology. It's a very complicated concept, but
absolutely,
it's an exponential and not a linear, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I know you're familiar with Moore's law. So to that point, if you use that to any degree whatsoever, which, that was kind of the pace that they set the wireless industry at, was all based on chipset technology, right? Which was what Moore's law was developed. And they said the technology was evolving at every 18 months. It's got to be, I don't know what the numbers are. And they're actually going back and they're saying that they have to reformulate that because that's completely blown out of the water at this point. And to your point, taking things and stacking them on something that's learning on its own, and I mean, it doesn't
Right.
stop, right? We've been
Right.
limited up to this point by our own ability to think. Now we can leverage other technology to think and extrapolate and create new ideas.
Right.
Yeah,
And what I was getting to, back to your comment to
yeah,
relate it, right, about, oh, I'm going to be replaced by an AI that can do coaching.
right.
Well, here's the thing. That's a today sort of view. It comes down to a couple factors. Factor one, some people would prefer to just ask the machine and get back a response,
Yeah,
not necessarily even quantifying if that's a good response, but that's I mean, if the world is made up of, what it's made up of. So there's some subset of that. But then there's folks who are like, hey, I got some information, but it just generated more questions. I want to go deeper. I needed better resource. And that's how we get to you and your folks. Okay, cool. But then the next level is there should be a virtual Eric that is accessible. I'm brainstorming with you. I'm not telling you to do this. I'm telling you to think it through. But don't follow my advice. I'm just a consultant. What do I know? But there should be a virtual Eric that has some of your essence and maybe the things that you generally kind of give away for free for a flavor of talking to the Eric, right? I'm making that all goofy. But,
Yep.
and that's out there as a persona. It's on your website. It's whatever. It's, and it's a free app for people to play with. But inside of that is the, hey, get a hold of real Eric. And then of course there's monetization options, et cetera. But what I think the sort of end result of that in my view is a real-time virtual Eric that, and you can do some of this now, but we're a little technologically far away from the piece I'm trying to get to, right? I can take all of your writings, all of your documents, your books, et cetera. I can convert them into a model of you, and I can have you converse with it, and you'll be like, wow, hot dang, this thing knows how to say stuff. But the knowledge is static. And that's the part where I'm saying we're not quite in the right spot. We got to keep stacking, right? Because the static knowledge is sufficient, but it doesn't grow, it doesn't change, doesn't learn. What we want is a customized AI that has all of your back-end knowledge and information, but also your view and the way you look at, interpret, internalize, and produce new data as your, avatar, whatever you want to call it, who's out in the world searching and sourcing new information and looking at the latest papers and the latest, information in the field, et cetera. And then I don't necessarily want to use the word regurgitate, assimilating and then using that data contextually appropriately when working with clients. That's the thing, but I don't think that's the thing we're going to have in the next year, right?
No, I wouldn't say the next year, but I would definitely say the next 3 to 5. That's there. I would say, well, and I know I've already been proposed a similar concept that you just referenced to put on my site, which would not only be an accumulation of my knowledge, but then they proposed the idea that they would actually take all of my 28 coaches and their collective knowledge. And it would be, because for as much as I know and as good as I might be, my depth and understanding in finance, or my depth and understanding in sales or marketing or any of those categories goes only so far. So incorporate somebody else's perspective. And then one of the things that you said, which, and I would say the lens and how I looked at something, my lens is developed by my life experiences. That's the piece I don't think you can create. You can't quantify that with AI and what that's going to look like yet, right? That's the piece that without the life experience, because if for all intents and purposes, AI is 3 years old, right?
Yeah, yeah. For what we're playing with, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right. And to that, because it obviously has been around for a lot longer than that. But the point I'm trying to make is that as people look at that through their individual lenses, how they interpret is actually where the real deep thinking comes from, right? Because the knowledge is one thing, right? I literally heard somebody say this on a podcast a couple weeks ago. And he's like, there's no loss of knowledge. There's information everywhere on the internet now, but it's how you use the knowledge. And you do that through the wisdom. The wisdom is attained through experience. And so you have to experience things there to be that experiential learning is necessary for the application of the knowledge.
Right. I agree. Just relate it back. Reading is fundamental. In this context of what you're talking about is really, we'll just say reading.
Yep.
What I'm referring to is ingest, right?
Yep.
What we have today is models that are trained and have a particular date time cutoff because the training has to stop at some point.
Right.
And then augmented with things like retrieval augmented generation or RAG, or ability to do hybrid searching with real-time content versus trained content, all these hacks.
Right.
What we really will see, and what I suspect is what's going to happen in the next less than 3 years, is, I don't know how to define it other than sort of a real-time training based models where they're constantly assimilating new information in real time, and their training and learning is happening like humans train and learn, which is also called
Right.
conversation, whatever, right? I just, because, sometimes you listen to a podcast to learn stuff that's effectively language and reading, but we're calling it listening. What my point, though, because these are language-based entities, so right now we're hard based on, we did GPU capability, we're doing these matrix math sort of stuff and neural networking and all those cool, great buzzwords. Thanks. Just throw that in the trash for the moment. What I care about is I can't do real-time training at a decent sized data set, right? Like, you can take 3 seconds of my voice and turn it into a model. Sure. And then language-wise, you just make that model say whatever you want to say. But that doesn't mean you can assimilate a brand new article or podcast that was pushed into the model and reference it the next hour. That's not happening. Humans can do that. But when we have that, now the question becomes, okay, I have all of Eric's historical information, and I'm onboarding all of the new information that's out there just like Eric would. If Eric comes up with a really interesting way to describe his worldview, his lens, am I virtual Eric? I still agree with you, by the way, that it isn't necessarily the accumulation of facts that make opinion. It's accumulation of facts along with life experience, ups and downs. I got burned over here, so I'm cautious about that. I took a risk over here and I made $1 million. I am not cautious about that, et cetera. That gives you your lens versus my lens versus her lens.
Yeah.
All the same information, right?
Yep.
But what I think is going to happen is those are going to be 3 different models who are going to
Interesting.
have,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Just think about it that way.
Yeah.
And so what'll eventually be is, like, now we have these halfway decent assistants. I won't say the names because I don't want to trigger anyone's stuff, but everybody knows the names I'm talking about. But what you'll do is you'll pick one of those because he or she has a related viewpoint that you agree with. It's like listening to a talk radio host. You like this
You
person,
listen to
that
who
person.
you want to hear.
Right,
Yep.
right. And it's your experiences, your lens, et cetera. But you'll find the AI one that you like, and that's the model you use when you make queries. And I think that's where we're headed.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think that there's a lot to be in what you're saying there. I mean, because I had this conversation with one of my coaches is really deep into AI, super deep. Yeah, if I'm waist deep, he's like right up to his chin at least. And he's got a little bit of a tech background. I don't have a tech background. I'm a sales guy that I'm like, I see this technology and I pay enough attention. I actually was working with a marketing person and we were trying to identify what separates My Biz Coaches from other coaching companies. And she was asking what has been led to my success. And I said, well, one is my ability to read people and identify and have the emotional quotient to put my feet in their shoes and see from their perspective, which will allow me to relate and be relatable. And having so much life experience as I did, cramming so much into the 30 years in so many different ways, because not only did I have that 24 years in the wires, but I've also owned 15 of my own business over 30 years. So I've got this unique perspective from both sides of the fence. And so as we're going through the conversation, she says to me, she goes, well, one of the things I would add to that, she goes, is your pattern recognition. Your ability to recognize patterns is very unique relative to other people that I've spoke to. And I'm like, okay, I can appreciate that. And so as she kind of elaborated on that, I'm like, I had not thought about it from that perspective, but that's actually pretty unique because that goes back to what we're talking about with AI, because AI is about pattern recognition. A big piece of that is about pattern recognition. But ironically, that is probably one of the things with most of the people in let's say entrepreneurs. I'll use that category of people. Most entrepreneurs are not as good at recognizing patterns as they should be, in my opinion, at least in the areas of the business that they're not familiar. They may see it in their core skill set,
Right. Of course.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Everyone
they
has
see it.
those
They see
gaps,
it.
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
They have
they see
to.
it in their yeah. Well, and then I think that that's the opportunity because they see it in their area of, let's say, for instance, they're a landscaper. They recognize the patterns in landscaping. That's what makes them be able to build that business model. But operationally, people are wired a little bit differently, and they see different patterns. And I just have a wider spectrum of pattern recognition that allows me to identify patterns over. And I wish I would have been able to apply that a little bit better as it related to being able to read the stock market or something like that.
Yeah, right. No kidding. No, so I look at that. I have a very similar view, and I agree with what you're saying. The phrase, it takes a village to raise a child,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
But from my point of view, it takes a team even to make a solopreneur successful,
Great point.
because you can be, let's say that you're a marketing specialist and that is your career and that is your solo consulting job, and you could be damn good at marketing. Does that mean you're good at payroll or double entry accounting? It's not many people that are actually good at that anyway, but it's a separate conversation. But okay, so you crush it with marketing. Are you great at invoicing?
Yeah.
Do like there's just all these elements, and that's
And
why.
even more basic, can you sell? You're a phenomenal marketer. Can you sell your services? Because I can tell you when I was a very successful salesperson, but when I went out on my own to sell myself as a service,
Right.
that was not easy. That was actually it took me a good year to get good at that. Maybe a year and a half.
Yeah. So from that point of view, right, you're good at the thing you're good at, and you might be good at 6 things,
Right.
but there's 6 things you're not good at.
Right.
When you first start out, you don't have the revenue. You have to do everything because that's what entrepreneurship is. That's what being a business owner is. You
Right.
get to a certain point, you should be delegating so that you can focus and perfect the things you're good at, because that's where your value add is. And you
That's right.
shouldn't be doing the things you suck at, whatever that ends up being. And, sometimes you have friends that help, or it's a spouse or whatever, right? Doesn't matter.
Yep.
But at
Yep.
some point, you hire a CPA and all of a sudden you go, oh, wow, I was just wasting my time because this CPA doesn't cost that much and I don't do any of that anymore. Or an attorney or whatever. It's all the services. And that's part of the way the economy is supposed to work. But also, and I recognize if you're a struggling business owner and you're trying to get there, hiring a CPA does not solve the problem of give me sales. You got to get to the point where you reach that goal. But what I see a lot of folks who are just still trying to do it all.
Yeah.
And they could just make a leap or two forward if they could get out from under their own way. You know what I mean? I'm sure you see the same thing, obviously.
Oh, yeah. And let's kind of look at the AI component of that. And maybe it's not AI directly, but it is the automation solutions. A lot of the things that we aren't inherently good at, that are the back end of the business, so to speak, are often things that can be automated and digitized and automated and put into place and leveraged even more so now with AI. So a lot of the marketing that you just referenced, we teach clients on how to use their CRM solution. It's more than a CRM; it's more robust than that. But it has an AI automation that we can build up a funnel real quick and have them run a new campaign on a product or service solution offer that they want to introduce, and we can just test it. And it takes us like 2 hours to set it up and run it. And if they've got a client base, we can run it and it's all automated and it takes 0 time, and we just set it and let it run for 2 weeks and see what it does. And that's because of the power of technology and the power of AI.
Yeah.
And that business owner didn't have to do any of that. They just didn't know how to do any of it.
Yeah, let's actually talk about that a little bit. So let's talk about some of the easy wins from an automation perspective. AI, is in that mix there. You talked about doing outreach or business development or funneling or all of those things. They're all the same basic story, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The whole idea is get people to show up at your door to talk to and tell them how you can help them, blah, 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 right?
Right.
if you've been on LinkedIn in the last 2 years, you know what we're talking about because you've been inundated with messages from people you don't know who want to give you things you may or may not need.
Exactly.
And give
If
is
they
really a
just do a
nice way
little
to
due
say,
diligence.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And we're all at this point just like not even looking at LinkedIn anymore because it's so mired in gunk, if you will. But, there another example, the algorithm game of content generation, where
Oh, there you go.
in order to keep yourself, business, whatever, relevant, you have to be in the mix. You have to show up occasionally in the feed or whatever you want to call it. But that's a lot of effort and time. And, there are a lot of folks who are like, oh, I've got to make the message sound great. Yeah, but I mean, in the end, you don't, but that's a whole nother conversation. Different personalities there. But that can be automated.
Yes.
And you'd be surprised. Look, you can even do this the very simplistic way. Go to ChatGPT, or if you don't want to pay, go to duck.ai, which is a free portal to get to the similar things. It's the same models in the back end. And say, hey, this is what I do. This is my business. That you can put in a whole bunch of details about who you are, what you offer, et cetera, and then say, please generate 20 social media posts for me. And if you're going to do this, folks, if you're listening, ask it to also not use emojis because it will very much look like the AI wrote it for you if you don't. And then you've got, what are you going to do? 3 a week? You've got 5 weeks, 6 weeks worth of post material. It's just now sitting in a buffer. And now I'm doing this the old school bad way. Like you can completely automate this forever, but I'm just saying you can go to ChatGPT, prompt it out, get 15, 20 posts. Every morning, take one out of your little notepad list and just put it on Facebook or whatever you're doing, right? Like that, and that's the simple way. There's way better ways to do that more intelligently. I actually saw some pretty interesting tools that were free that would do what I refer to as resume reconciliation, which is you get the resumes in, you've got a job description, you feed the job description to the tool, and then you just throw it at a directory of, resume PDFs. Right. And what it comes back with is, these two seem to be a better than 80% match based on your JD. And then you have, okay, so instead of this funnel of, everybody like shakes their head and goes, I can't process this many resumes. What am I going to, it's impossible.
Right.
And that's how we get applicant tracking systems, which don't make it good on either the employer side or the employee side, whatever.
Nope.
But that's whatever, another whole conversation. But yeah, like because of the inundation of emails and all that stuff, and you post a job online, you're going to get swarmed, right? And there's now a whole bunch of AI related tools that will apply automatically for jobs for you all day long.
Did not know that. That's crazy.
It's like a shotgun approach, but it's a machine gun.
Well, it's funny you say that too, because on LinkedIn, there was somebody propositioned something to me and said, hey, we were looking for a president that will run our sales organization. We thought you would be a good candidate, right? And I have that I'm open for work on my profile because I'm always looking for clients. Right?
Yeah.
But not jobs necessarily. But I looked at it. I'm like, just out of curiosity, I'm like, I wonder if there's an angle where I could go and proposition myself as a fractional president, and see if there was if it made sense, or for myself or one of my coaches for that matter. And so I looked at the job description and I'm reading through it, and I'm like, huh. And so then I used LinkedIn's resume submitter thing, and as I was just kind of playing with it, and it said I don't remember. It said some kind of you're a high match or something like that. Like you're an 8 out of 10 on your skill set match for this resume. I'm like, that was kind of. It's been years since I haven't been applying for jobs.
Sure,
yeah. I'm like, well, this is really interesting. So as you were mentioning that, I'm like, that doesn't surprise me now that I think about it, because that's amazing how much they're including technology in that aspect, and I hadn't done that in years.
No, there's a whole bunch of really fun pieces in there, but we don't have the time. The last time I put a job posting on LinkedIn, it's probably 2 years ago. And I was looking for a relatively specific software development role. Within 72 hours, I had 1,000 applicants.
Wow. That is crazy. Okay. What percentage of that was US based versus international?
Right. So one of the things the pandemic has done to us is anyone anywhere can work in a role, right? which, there's positives, negatives to it. And I actually think it's overall positive. But one of the things that happened in this particular instance is we had a team of I was running an engineering department for a startup. And so I had a few folks go interview some of these candidates, and I had some help filtering because I wasn't looking at 1,000 resumes. I don't know anybody that would.
Right, exactly.
And we ended up with about 7 potential candidates. We interviewed a few. One of the candidates was in Nigeria. Now, unfortunately, that's already a warning sign because there's a bunch of really interesting things about scams online from that country.
Particularly from Nigeria, yeah.
And one of the folks on the team that was interviewing this person started sending me messages during the interview saying, do you know anything about this candidate? And of course, I hadn't vetted it yet. The way I was running that organization, the team interviewed people until they found somebody they think they like. And then I interview them because I want the team to gel. So if they come to me and say, hire this person, there's a better chance of success for the candidate, right?
Sure.
It's just a methodology. Anyway, and he just started asking me questions, and I was finally like, okay, what's going on? He says, I've interviewed this guy before. He's a scam. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He will not be the person that shows up to work. He's the person that interviews to get the role. And then someone else with their camera off will show up to work, and they won't do any work. And as long as it takes you to fire them, they'll collect the check, and it is a year's worth of money in Nigeria.
Wow.
And I'm like, is this a real thing? Are you kidding? And then you go look up this guy's picture. You can reverse search images and you find him posted all over the place as, do not interview this candidate. This is this guy's.
Wow, that is so interesting.
And I'm like, okay. And if you're going to hire somebody remote, you're going to do this whole thing. And it was just after, it was still in the pandemic, but it was towards the end of 21. So things were starting to clear, but not 100%. So the idea was, we're hiring remote people, so why do we care where they are? Obviously, that would be the normal thing to think. And I was like, wow. But yeah, like posted a job on LinkedIn is just, you're asking for just being inundated with all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, especially on LinkedIn.
Right. And I think it's the same on any job website, which then begs the question, how are people getting jobs? Neither you or I are fixing that, but.
Yeah. Well, and of course, the next question is do we believe that the unemployment rates are actually what they say they are?
Well,
not that I'm a conspiracy theorist or in any way.
No, look, I'll just say this. I have a very similar comment, which is simply, how can you possibly rate the number of people who have decided to abandon looking for jobs? How can you count that? You can't count that.
Nope.
You can estimate it, and I know that, some of those folks have really good algorithms. Yeah. But the idea that how many people have abandoned their job search, I don't think so. Or have gone and taken a job that they just need to put food on the table because they need, food and shelter. And they're no longer looking for the 6-figure job that they used to get because they tried for 16 months and they got nowhere, or some variant they're in. And the historical number of folks in their 50s who become consultants is, it's like 60% or some foolish number because everybody in their 50s is a consultant. Okay, fine. Hi, we're consultants. Nice to see you. But, that take those folks out of the mix because I think that now dropped down with what's been going on the last couple of years. I think a lot of people in their 40s became consultants. And so they're out of the job search category. So I think some of those numbers are designed to make sure that sentiment stays in a particular place from the perspective of markets and other things. Right.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
All right, man, we've been all over the place, but it's been a lot of fun. Any final AI-related stuff you want to poke at?
Yeah, I would say this as it relates to AI. We put a lot of effort into it specifically because, and Jeff, when you and I were discussing this, one of the things that we do at My Biz Coaches is any kind of new technology or any kind of new insights that we gain for the intention of taking it back and sharing it with our client base.
Right, makes sense.
And so. So our entire purpose is, we realize that the small business owner, and we've kind of alluded to this a couple of times throughout the show, is the average small business owner doesn't have time to figure all these things out. They're just busy trying to they get money, put food on the table, feed the family, do their thing, run their business. They don't have time to figure all these things out. And this is just one more of those things where it's like, it could be really valuable to them if they actually understood how to implement it. And so, It's like we just educate, and then we take it and we like, hey, this is what's going to be valuable to you. This is what we highly recommend you try and implement in your business. But we look at it specifically from, you're the average small business owner. Let us help identify what's the best way for you to use it in your business.
I think it's a very logical, valid approach from my perspective.
Yeah. Because there's a lot, to your point, there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of information, and some's relevant and some's not for the average person. Our category of people is the 10% of people out there that are business owners. And of those people out there that are business owners, a lot of it would be relevant if they just understood how to implement it. So that's what we focus on.
Got it. Okay, cool. Hey, look, had a great conversation. I enjoyed talking to you.
It's a great time. Thanks so much, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you too.